Wow. Wow. How are you doing? I think there's a little bit of a connection issue on my end, but I don't know if it's gonna be alright. I'm hoping it fixes itself, but we'll see. It is a bit stuttery. Oh no. どうしよう。I mean, I could always start. Maybe I should have restarted my PC before I tried streaming, hoping it's okay. Nah. It comes and goes. So hopefully, it's okay. Out of all the days, it could have gone bad. Should we try maybe restarting? I don't want it to be too laggy, and it's going from red to green every like 30 seconds, so should I restart? Okay, I'm gonna restart. Hang in there. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back. Wah. Wow. I think we're back. Are we back? We're back. Ugh. I should have double checked. It was fine when I was setting up, but I guess it just derped out a little bit while I was waiting for everything to calm down. Hello, welcome. Oh no, it's still doing it. どうしよう. Is it fine? It was fine, and now it's derping up again. No. At this rate, I probably have to restart my router. It's still a little dropping frames. Pain. There is a little bit of stutter in between. There are crickets, yes there are. Sorry about that. I should have double checked. Well, we'll go on. If it gets really bad, then we'll restart the router and such. But for now, I think it's not too bad. Cross my fingers. Okay, so my movements might be a little weird, but please don't mind it. As long as you can hear my voice, this is fine, because it's a read-along stream. Okay, as long as you can hear me, everything will be fine. Okay, and so, we're gonna be reading a little bit of a light novel called Spice and Wolf. I'm gonna have the text on screen, so you can read along on my screen. Or if you already own the books, then you can read along with your own books. Or if you don't have your own copy and am interested in reading along on your own, or finding out what happens next, etc., then you can always check out the ebook on Bookwalker. You can use the code INA or 600 yen coupon. Yes. Yeah, Spice and Wolf, I watched the anime a while ago, but I have not read the books. So, when they gave me the choice to, I was like, yeah, you can, can I try reading Spice and Wolf? And they were like, okay. So, yeah, this is sponsored. Thanks to Bookwalker allowing me to read the book and showing the book on stream. I'm only gonna be reading a little bit of the first volume, so if you guys are interested and are curious about what happens after the part I read, make sure you check it out. Yes. It's kind of a bedtime story if you're going to bed. Yeah. I actually really appreciate Bookwalker because I do read quite a bit of light novels. And I can have all my books ready to read anywhere with like my tablet or on my phone, etc. And it's translated to English officially, so very good. You guys should check it out. Anyways, let me just Aha! It does work. Okay. Phew. I totally forgot to test the settings after I restarted the PC, so I was afraid that the settings might have changed. But we're okay. We're okay. I believe Bookwalker. I'm not sure if they have the Kindle versions or not. You'll have to go check their website, but they do have their like own app that you can download, I think. That you can use for tablets and phones. Anyways, let us start. Spice and Wolf Volume 1 by Isuna Hasekura. Dun 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 dun. Have you guys heard about Spice and Wolf? It's the first volume was released quite a while ago, so maybe some of you haven't heard about it yet, but the thing about light novels is that they usually have illustrations at the front that like explain what goes on in like the whole volume and stuff. And then yeah, so that's also like, and then they also have like black and white pages in the middle that kind of illustrates what happens. Yeah. Oh, Burrito. What are you doing, Burrito? Oh, it's an illustration I see. Huh. I wonder why Burrito covered up the screen for a bit. I wonder why. Maybe you guys should buy the book and check it out. Those of you who own the book or have read it knows what just happened, but shh, it's a secret. I wonder why. Let's see, they have like an introduction of the characters and a little bit of the illustration. Oh, let me just crop this a little better. There. Now it's a little off, but you'll have to manage because all the pages are different. Anyways, so there is Lawrence, who is the traveling merchant. He's the one right here. And there is Zaren, the mysterious merchant. And I wonder who this mysterious girl is. I wonder who she is. We'll find out. Okay, next page. Aw, they're so cute. Okay. Anyways, we shall continue on. There's the contents, prologue, chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's the epilogue. That is all for the first volume. I think we can try read through until chapter 1 and 2, maybe. We'll see how the time goes, but Spice and Wolf, Isuna Hasekura. Published by Yen Press, I believe. And the copyright. Thanks for the translations, Yen Press. And the good thing about Bookwalker is that you can just like click the titles and it like takes you straight to each chapter. 2006. Wow. How many years ago is that? 21 minus 6. 15? I bet some of you here are 15, right? Some of you are 15 in the chat, right? Oh. It was released when you were born. Okay. We shall start. The prologue. In this village, when the ripened ears of wheat sway in the breeze, it is said that a wolf runs through them. This is because one can make out the form of a running wolf in the shifting stalks of the wheat fields. When the wind is too strong and the stalks are blown over, it is said that the wolf has trampled them. When the harvest is poor, it is said that the wolf has eaten it. It was a nice turn of phrase, but it had a troublesome aspect that flawed it, she felt. Still, lately it was a popular sort of expression, and there were few remaining who wielded it with sort of familiarity or awe it had held in the past. Although the autumn sky that was visible between the swaying stalks of wheat had not changed in hundreds of years, conditions below that sky had indeed changed. The villagers who tended the wheat as the years passed lived for 70 years at the most. Perhaps it would be worse for them to go to centuries without changing. Maybe that is why there is no need for them to honor the ancient agreement, she thought. In any case, she knew she no longer had a place here. The mountains that rose in the east caused the clouds over the village to drift mostly north. She thought of her homeland beyond those drifting clouds and sighed. Returning her gaze from the skies to the fields, her eyes fell upon her magnificent tail, which twitched just past her nose. With nothing better to do, she set to grooming it. The autumn sky was high and clear. Harvest time had come again. Many wolves were running through the wheat fields. I wonder who's talking. This is volume 1, yes. In chapter 1. So, that's the last then. Looks like 70 pelts on the nose. Always a pleasure. Hey, anytime. You're the only one who'll come this far into the mountains, Lawrence. I should be thanking you. But for my trouble, I get truly fine pelts. I'll come again. The usual pleasantries concluded. Lawrence managed to leave the village just around 5 o'clock. The sun was just beginning its climb when he left, and it was midday by the time he descended from the mountains and entered the plains. The weather was good. There was no wind. It was a perfect day for dozing in the wagon as he crossed the plains. It seemed absurd that only recently he had felt the chill of the approaching winter. This was Lawrence's 7th year as a traveling merchant, and his 25th since birth. He gave a huge yawn in the driver's box. There were few grasses or trees of any notable height, so he had an expansive view. At the very edge of his field of vision, he could see a monastery that had been built some years earlier. He didn't know what young noble was cloistered in this remote location. The masonry of the building was magnificent, and unbelievably, it even had an iron gate. Lawrence seemed to remember that roughly 20 monks lived there, attended to by a similar number of manservants. When the monastery had first been built, Lawrence had anticipated fresh English hard. Anyways, the monks were somehow able to secure supplies without employing independent merchants, though so his dreams were fleeting. Clientele. Read along, by the way. Don't worry about it. It's not a word that's usually used that often, you know. Admittedly, the monks lived simply, telling their fields, so trade with them would not be especially profitable. There was another problem in that they would probably solicit donations and leave their bills unpaid. As far as simple trade went, there were worse partners. They were worse partners than out thieves. Still, there were times when trade with them was convenient. Thus, Lawrence looked in the direction of the monastery with some small regret, but then his eyes narrowed. From the direction of the monastery, someone was waving at him. What's this? The figure did not look like a manservant. They wore dark brown work clothes. The waving figure was covered in grey clothing. His deliberate approach likely meant some hassle, but ignoring him could make matters worse later. Lawrence reluctantly turned his horse towards the figure. Perhaps having realized that Lawrence was now headed his way, the figure stopped waving, but made no move to approach. He appeared to be waiting for the cart's arrival. It would hardly be the first time that a church-associated person demonstrated arrogance. Lawrence was in no mood to take such insult personally. As he approached the monastery and the figure became clearer, Lawrence muttered in spite of himself, "A knight?" He at first dismissed the idea as ridiculous, but as he drew nearer, he saw that it was unmistakably a knight. The grey clothing was in fact silver armor. "You there! What's your business here?" The distance between them was still too far for conversation, which is why the knight yelled. He apparently felt no need to introduce himself, as if his position were obvious. "I am Lawrence, a traveling merchant. Do you require my assistance?" The monastery was now directly in front of him. He was close enough to count the number of servants working in the fields to the south. He also noted that the knight in front of him was not alone. There was another one past the monastery, perhaps standing guard. "A merchant! There is no town in the direction you came from, merchant," said the knight hotly, sticking out his chest as if to display the golden cross that was engraved there. But the mantle draped over his shoulders was grey, indicating a knight of low rank. His blonde hair looked freshly cut, and his body did not look as if it had been through many battles, so his pride most likely came from being a new knight. It was important to deal with such men carefully. They tended to be excitable. Sorry, this is not part of the novel, but I haven't read out loud since like my time in school. It's like I haven't done it in so long. Well, I guess I did read along in the members, but I'm nervous. Anyways, but the mantle draped over his shoulder was grey, indicating a knight of... Oh, wait, I already read this. So, instead of replying, Lawrence took a leather pouch out of his breast pocket and slowly undid the twine that held it closed. Inside were candies made out of crystallized honey. Ooh. He plucked one out and popped it in his mouth, then offered the open bag to the knight. "Care for one?" Said the knight, hesitating momentarily before his desire for the sweet candy went out. Still, perhaps because of his position as a knight, a considerable amount of time passed between his initial nod and when he actually reached out and took a honey drop. "A half-day's travel east of here, there's a small village in the mountains. I was trading salt there." "Ah, I see you've a load in your cart. Salt as well?" "No, but first, look," said Lawrence, turning around and removing the tarp that covered his load, revealing a bundle of magnificent marten pelts. A year's salary of the knight before him was paltry compared to its worth. And this? Ah, this is wheat I received from the village." The sheaf of wheat in the corner of the mountain of furs had been harvested in the village where Lawrence had traded his salt. It was hardy in cold weather and resisted insects. He planned to sell it in the northwest, where crops had sustained heavy frost damage. Very well. You may pass. It was a strange way of speaking for someone who'd summoned him over so high-handedly earlier, but Lawrence was to meekly say, "Yes, sir." Now a fine merchant he'd be. "So, what occasion your post here, Sir Knight?" The knight's brow knitted in consternation at the question, and furrowed still deeper as he glanced at the bag of honey drops. He was well and truly caught now. Lawrence undid the bag's string closure and plucked out another sweet, giving it to the knight. Delicious. I should thank you." The knight was being reasonable. Lawrence inclined his head gratefully, using his best trader's smile. "The monks have caught wind of a big pagan festival that's approaching, thus the increased guard. Do you know anything of this festival?" If his face had betrayed any hint of his disappointment at the explanation, calling it a third-rate performance would have been generous. Oh my goodness, my neck gets so dry when I talk this much. Pagan! Pagan! So, Lawrence only affected a pained expression and answered, "Sadly, I know nothing." This was of course a huge lie, but the knight was just as mistaken, so there were nothing for it. Perhaps it truly is being held in secret then. Pagans are a cowardly lot after all. The knight was so mistaken it was amusing, but Lawrence merely agreed and took his leave. The knight nodded and thanked him again for the honey drops. Undoubtedly, they had been delicious. Most of a knight's money went to equipment and lodging. Even an apprentice cobbler lived a better life. It had surely been a long time since the knight had eaten anything sweet. Not that Lawrence had any intention of giving him another piece. "Still, a pagan festival, they say," Lawrence repeated the knight's words to himself once the monastery was well behind him. Lawrence had an inkling of what the knight was talking about. Inkling. Actually, anyone from this area would know about it, but it was no pagan festival. For one thing, true pagans were never further north or further east. The festival that happened here was hardly something one needed knights to guard against. It was a simple harvest festival, of sorts to be found nearly anywhere. True, this area's festival was somewhat grander than the typical celebration, which is probably why the monastery was keeping an eye on it and reporting to the city. The church had long been unable to keep control over the area, which undoubtedly made it all the more nervous about going-ons. Indeed, the church had been eager to hold inquisitions and convert heathens, and clashes between natural philosophers and theologians in the city were far from rare. The time when the church could command the populace's unconditional submission was vanishing. The dignity of the institution was beginning to crumble, even if the inhabitants of the cities and nothing all were gradually beginning to realize it. In fact, the Pope had recently had to petition the monarchs of several nations for funds when tits and come in below expectations. Such a tale would have been preposterous even 10 years before. I can explain why I'm doing this. Teeth is. Okay. Thus the church was desperate to regain its authority. "Business everywhere will suffer," said Lawrence with a rueful smile, popping another honey drop in his mouth. Okay, explanations why I'm really bad at reading out loud is because my eyes read real fast, but my mouth doesn't read fast enough. And I'm just like, oh no, I can't. Like, my brain would have read this page in like a couple of seconds, and I can't read this in a couple of seconds out loud. I'm trying. Brain speed, mouth not speed. Okay, I'll try reading much slower. Maybe I can do better. The western skies were a more beautiful golden hue than the wheat in the fields by the time Lawrence arrived in the plains. Distant birds became tiny shadows as they hurried home, and here and there the frogs sang themselves to sleep. It appeared that the wheat fields had been mostly harvested, so the festival would undoubtedly begin soon, perhaps even as soon as the day after tomorrow. Before Lawrence laid the expanses of the village of Paslow's fertile wheat fields, the more abundant the harvest, the more prosperous the villagers. Furthermore, the noble who managed the land, one Count Arendot, was a famous area eccentric who enjoyed working in the fields himself. Naturally, the festival also enjoyed his support, and every year it was a riot of wine and song. "Whoa there, good work!" Lawrence called out to a farmer driving a cart heaped high with wheat in the corner of one of his fields. It was well ripened wheat. Ah! My brain, slow down. Oh no. The buffer, no. You did good. There. Please don't fail me. No. We're back. Are we back? It's fine now, okay. Where was I? Those who invested in the wheat futures could breathe a sigh of relief. I can't sigh of relief. Yeah. What's that? Might you tell me where to find Yare? Lawrence asked. Oh, Yare will meet over yonder. See where the crowd is gathering? That field. It's all youngsters at his place this year. Whoever's slowest will wind up being the holo. Holo. Said the farmer good-naturedly, his tan face smiling. It was kind of guileless smile a merchant could never manage. How is... Okay, there's no... connection, please. How's the connection? Is it back? We're back. No buffer. It's okay. Okay. Lawrence thanked the farmer with his best treater's smile and turned his horse toward Yare's place. Just as the farmer had said, there was a crowd gathering within its confines, and they were shouting something. They seemed to be making sport of the few who were still working in the field, but it wasn't ridicule at their lateness. The jeering was part of the festival. As Lawrence lazily approached the crowd, he was able to make out their shouting. "There's a wolf! A wolf! A wolf lies there! Who will be the last and catch the wolf? Who? Who? Who?" The villagers shouted, their faces so cheerful one wondered if they were drunk. None of them noticed Lawrence pulling his cart up behind the crowd. What they so enthusiastically called a wolf was in fact not a wolf at all. Had it been real, no one would have been laughing. The wolf was the harvest god, and according to the village legend, it resided within the last stalk of wheat to be reaped. Whoever cut that stalk down would be possessed by the wolf, it was said. "It's the last bundle. Mind you, don't cut too far. All of fleece from the green land. Who will catch the wolf? It's Yare, 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 Yare." Lawrence got off his wagon and peered at the crowd just as Yare caught the last bundle of wheat. His face was black with sweat and soil, and as he grinned and hefted the wheat high, threw his head back and howled, "Ow! It's Hollow! 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 Ow! Hollow the wolf is here! Hollow the wolf is here! Catch it now! Catch it quick! Don't let it escape!" The shouting men suddenly gave chase after Yare. The god of bountiful harvest, once cornered, would possess a human and try to escape. Capture it and it would remain for another year. None knew if this god truly existed, but this was an old tradition in the area. Lawrence had traveled far and wide, so he put no stock in the teachings of the church, but his faith and superstition was greater even than that of the farmers here. Too many times had he crossed mountains only to arrive in towns and find the price of his goods dropping precipitously. English hard! Ow. It was enough to make anyone superstitious. Thus, he didn't bat an eye at traditions that true believers or church officials would have found outrageous. But it was inconvenient that Yare was this year's hollow. Now, Yare would be locked in the granary stocked with treats until the festival was over, close to a week, and would be impossible to talk to. Nothing for it, I suppose, said Lawrence, sighing as he returned to his wagon and made for the village head's residence. He had wanted to enjoy some drinks with Yare and report on the events at the monastery, but if he didn't sell the furs that were piled high in his wagon bed, he wouldn't be able to pay for goods purchased elsewhere when the bills came due. He also wanted to sell the wheat he'd bought from the other village and couldn't wait around for the festival to end. Lawrence talked briefly of the midday happenings at the monastery to the village head, who was busy with festival preparation. He politely declined the offer to stay at the night and put the village behind him. Years before the Count began to manage the region, it had suffered under heavy taxes that drove up the price of its exports. Lawrence had bought some of this unfavorably priced wheat and sold it for but a meager profit. He hadn't done it to win favor with the village, but rather because he simply didn't have the resources to compete with other merchants for the cheaper, finer grain. Nevertheless, the village was still grateful for his business then, and Yare had been the middleman for the deal. It was unfortunate that he couldn't enjoy a drink with Yare, but once Hollow appeared, Lawrence would soon be chased out of the village as the festival came to its climax. If he'd stayed the night, he wouldn't have been able to stay long. As he sat on his wagon, Lawrence felt the sense of loneliness at being excluded thus. Nibbling on some vegetable he'd been given as a souvenir, he took the road west, passing cheerful farmers returning from their day's work. Having returned to his lonely travel, Lawrence envied the farmers with their friends. Poor Lawrence, being left out of the festivals. Can you imagine if you travel somewhere for their festivities and they're like, sorry, you can't participate because you're from elsewhere? That's so sad. Poor Lawrence. Yeah, I need some tea. Maybe I should have gotten hot tea. My tea cooled down. PN Lawrence nibbling on his vegetables. Lawrence was a traveling merchant and 25 years old. At 12, he'd apprenticed under a relative, and at 18, he set out on his own. There were many places he had yet to visit, and he felt that true test of his mettle as a trader was yet to come. Like any number of traveling merchants, his dream was to save enough money to open a shop in town, but the dream still seemed distant. If he could seize upon the opportunity, it might not be so, but unfortunately, the larger traders seize such opportunities with their money. Nevertheless, he hauled loads of goods across the countryside in order to pay his debts in a timely fashion. Even if he saw a good opportunity, he lacked the wherewithal to seize it. To a traveling merchant, such a thing was as unreachable as the moon in the sky. Lawrence looked up at the moon and sighed. He realized such sighs were more frequent lately, rather as a reaction to years of frantic trading simply to make ends meet, or because recently he'd gotten slightly ahead and was thinking more about the future. Additionally, when he should have been thinking about little else beside creditors, payment deadlines, and getting to the next town as quickly as possible, thoughts chased one another through his head. Specifically, he thought of the people he'd met in his travels. He thought of the merchants he had come to know when visiting a town repeatedly on business, and the villagers he had become acquainted with at his destinations. The maidservants he'd fallen for during a long stay at an inn, waiting for a blizzard to pass, and on and on. In short, he longed for company more and more frequently. Such longing was an occupational hazard for a merchant who spent a better part of a year alone in a wagon, but Lawrence had only recently begun to feel it. Until now, he'd always boasted that it would never happen to him. Still, having spent so many days alone with the horse, he started to feel that it would be nice if the horse could speak. Stories of cart horses becoming human were not uncommon among traveling merchants, and Lawrence had since the beginning laughed off such yarns as ridiculous, but lately he wondered if they could be true. When a young merchant went to buy a horse from a horse trader, some would even recommend a mare with a completely straight face, just in case she turns human on you. This had happened to Lawrence, who'd ignored the advice and bought a sturdy stallion. That same horse was working steadily in front of him even now, but as time passed and Lawrence grew lonely, he wondered if he mightn't have been better off with the mare after all. On the other hand, that horse hauled heavy loads day in and day out. Even if it were to become human, it seemed impossible that it would fall in love with its master or use its mysterious powers to bring them good fortune. It would probably want to be paid and given rest, Lawrence mused. True. As soon as this occurred to him, he felt that it was best if a horse stayed a horse, even if it did make him selfish. Lawrence smiled bitterly and sighed as if tired of himself. Presently, he came to a river and decided to make camp for the night. The full moon was bright, but that did not guarantee that he wouldn't fall into the river, and if that happened, calling it a disaster would be an understatement. He'd have to hang himself. That kind of trouble he didn't need. Lawrence pulled back on the reins, and the horse stopped at the signal, heaving 2 or 3 sighs as it realized its long-anticipated rest was here. Giving the rest of his vegetable to the horse, Lawrence took a bucket out of the wagon bed and drew some water from the river, setting it before the animal. As it happily slurped at the bucket, Lawrence drank some of the water he'd gotten from the village. Wine would have been nicer, but drinking without a partner only made the loneliness worse. There was no guarantee he wouldn't get staggering drunk either, so Lawrence decided to go to bed. He'd half-heartedly nibbled on the vegetables most of the way, so he had only a bit of beef before hopping back in the wagon bed. Normally he slept in the hempen tarp that covered the bed, but tonight he had wagon load of marten pelts, so it would be a waste not to sleep on them. They might make him smell a bit beastly in the morning, but it was better than freezing. But jumping right into the pelts would crush the wheat sheaf, so in order to move them aside, he whisked the tarp off the wagon bed. The only reason he didn't shout was because of the sight that greeted him. The sight that greeted him was flaky unbelievable. Apparently, he had a guest. Hey! Lawrence wasn't sure his voice actually made a sound. He was shocked and wondered if the loneliness has finally broken him and he was hallucinating. But after he shook his head and rubbed his eyes, his guest had not disappeared. The beautiful girl was sleeping so soundly it seemed a shame to wake her. Hey, you there, said Lawrence nonetheless. Returning to his senses, he meant to inquire what exactly would motivate someone to sleep in a wagon bed. In the worst case, it might be a village runaway. He didn't want that kind of trouble. Came to the girl's defenseless response to Lawrence. Her eyes still closed, her voice so sweet it could make a poor traveling merchant, accustomed only to the brothels of the cities, lightheaded. She had a terrifying allure despite her obvious youth. Nestled there in the firs and illuminated by the moonlight, Lawrence gulped once before returning to reason. Given that she was so beautiful, if she was a prostitute, there was no telling how much he could be taken for if he was so much as touch her. Considering the economics of the situation, was a tonic far more effective than any prayer. Lawrence gained his composure and raised his voice once again. Hey, you there! What are you playing at? Sleeping in someone's car? The girl did not awaken. Fed up with this girl who slept so obstinately, Lawrence grabbed the pelt that supported her head and jerked it out from under her. The girl's head flopped into the gap left by the pelt, and finally he heard her irritated squawk. He was about to raise his voice at her again, then he froze. The girl had dog ears on her head. Nah. Wah. Now that the girl seemed to be finally awake, Lawrence summoned his courage and spoke again. You there, what are you doing, climbing in my wagon bed? Lawrence had been robbed more than once by thieves and bandits as he crossed the countryside. He considered himself bolder and more courageous than the average person. He wasn't one to quail just because the girl in front of him happened to have the ears of an animal. Despite the fact that the girl hadn't answered his question, Lawrence did not pose them again. This was because the girl, slowly awakening before him and entirely naked, was unspeakably beautiful. Are Her hair, illuminated by the moonlight in the wagon, looked as soft as silk and fell over her shoulders like the finest cloak. The strands that fell down her neck to her collarbone drew a line so beautiful it put the finest painting of the Virgin Mary to shame. Her supple arms were so fine they seemed carved from ice. Then exposed now in the middle of her body were her two small oppai. So beautiful they gave the impression of being carved from some inorganic material. They gave off a strangely vital scent, as if housed within her arresting charm was a warmth. But such a fascinating spectacle could just as soon go awry. The girl slowly opened her mouth and looked skyward. Closing her eyes, she howled, "Ow!" Lawrence felt a sudden fear. It blew through his body like a wind. The howl was the song of a wolf, a song a wolf would use to call its comrades to chase and corner a human. This was no howl like Yari had uttered earlier. It was a true howl. Lawrence dropped the bite of meat from his mouth. His horse reared, startled. Then he realized something. The moonlit girl's form, with the ears on her head, the ears of a beast. "'Tis a good moon. Have you no wine?" she said, letting the howl fade away, drawing her chin up and smiling slightly. Lawrence came back to himself at the sound of her voice. What was before him was neither dog nor wolf. It was a beautiful girl with ears of such an animal, though. "I have none, and what are you? Why do you sleep in my cart?" "Were you to be sold in town? Did you escape?" Lawrence meant to ask as authoritatively English as he could, but the girl did not so much as move. "What, so you have no wine? Food, then? My, such waste," said the girl unconcernedly, her nose twitching. She spied a bit of beef Lawrence had almost eaten earlier, snapping it up and popping it into her mouth. I need a drink. As he chewed it, Lawrence did not fail to note the two sharp fangs behind the girl's lips. "Are you some kind of demon?" he asked, his hands falling into the dagger at his waist. As traveling merchants often needed to convert large amount of currency, they often carried their monies in their form of items. The silver dagger was one such item, and silver was known as the holy metal, strong against evil. However, when Lawrence put his hand to the dagger and posed his question, the girl looked blankly at him and laughed heartily. "Me, a demon now?" Her mouth thrown open wide enough to drop the piece of meat. The girl was so adorable as to be disarming. Her two sharp fangs only added to her charm. However, being laughed at made Lawrence angry. "How is that so amusing?" "Oh, amusing it is! That is surely the first time I've been called a demon." Still giggling to herself, the girl picked up the meat again and chewed it. She did have fangs. "I did too." Add in her ears, and it was clear enough that she was no mere human. "What are you?" "Me? Who but you would I be talking to? The horse, say?" When Lawrence drew his dagger, the girl's smile disappeared. Her red-tinged amber eyes narrowed. What are you, I say? Drawing a blade on me now. How lacking in manners. What? I see. My escape was successful. My apologies. I had forgotten, said the girl with a smile. A completely guileless and charming smile. How's the connection? Is it okay? Is it freezing? YouTube It's okay. Okay. The smile didn't particularly sway him, but nevertheless, Lawrence somehow felt that pointing a blade at a girl was unseemly thing for a man to do, so he put it away. Okay. I am called Hollow. It has been some time since I've taken this form, but, well, it is quite nice. As the girl looked herself over approvingly, Lawrence was so caught on the first half of what she'd said that he missed the second half. Hollow? Hollow. A good name, no? Lawrence had traveled far and wide over so many lands, but there was only one place where he'd heard that name. None other than the harvest god of the village of Paslau. What a coincidence! I also know of one that goes by Hollow. It was bold of her to use the name of a god, but at least this told him that she was indeed a girl from the village. Perhaps she'd been hidden, raised in secret by her family because of her ears and fangs. That would fit her. That would fit with her claim to have escaped successfully. Lawrence had heard talk of abnormal children like this being born. They were called demon children, and it was thought that a devil or spirit had possessed them at birth. If the church discovered them, they, along with their families, would be burned at stake for demon worshipping. Such children were thus either abandoned in the mountains or raised in secret. So that was chapter 1. Meaning of Lawrence and Hollow. I'm reading about Hollow live! Oh man, I somehow expected all these sort of puns. Hollow debut when? Question mark? Enough. Yeah. This kind of sets a good kind of mood for the rest of the book, you know? Kind of like medieval setting, trading, and traveling merchants, and festivals, and the church, the monastery. She's too busy running a business. Is she running a VTuber agency? Economics. When you first heard about Hololive, you thought it was a remake. Honestly, I kind of want to watch the anime again after reading the first chapter. It's like nostalgic. Economics. Honestly, Hollow, she's so fluffy. Best girl. Yes. Yeah. Anime watch along. We still have quite a lot to watch along, so we'll have to see. Economics. I don't remember where the anime left off, but I know the book, there's quite a bit of volumes. Like if you check the ones that have been already translated to English, I think there was like 20 something volumes too, so there's a lot to read, friends. A lot to read. 21 volumes. It's a long running series. Pretty sure there's like a sequel too. I won't spoil on the on who the characters are, but there's there's a sequel too, I believe. So yes, very. If you like a comfy series, like a comfy long-running series, then it's worth a read. Wolf and Parchment, yes. Sequel is still going, yes. Now that this happened, I kind of want to buy and read all the books now. Because watching the anime and reading like the original novels are two different experiences, you know. Right. I'm not sure if you can play the VR game. it's like no. I lost my train of thought, but But don't you can you kind of like imagine Hollow's fluffy tail? I mean, the illustrations in the light novel kind of help with that, but you can just imagine her fluffy tail and ears. Soft. Play the VR game when you get a 3D debut. I don't know. Maybe. I imagine the permissions for that is very complicated. But yes. Shall we continue on? Chapter 2. I wanna at least read up to chapter 2 today. 21 books is a long time, but I remember there was one series. It was a manga series though, but I read the very first volume, and then I got really into it, and then so I bought like the rest of the 23 volumes or so, and I read it all in one go. It's quite funny because I think for me usually like a light novel, usually one volume takes around like an hour for me to read. So, hour or less. So if I spent the whole day reading light novels, I could probably finish reading Spice Novel. So, yeah, I read fast. That's why I stumble upon my words because my okay, for this page right now, I would read the first and the like last in like a very short amount of time. So it's a speed, but yeah. Try reading is good, and I stumble upon my words because my brain reads it real fast, but my mouth is just like. Anyways, we shall go on to chapter 2. Burrito. Wait, this was not the end of chapter 1? Are you telling me this was not the end of chapter 1? There was more to chapter 1? Okay. I wonder what Burrito covered up. Maybe you guys should buy the book and find out. Use the code INA on Bookwalker to get 600 yen coupon for first-time customers. Heh. Okay. Apparently we weren't finished with chapter 1, so let's continue. But this was the first time Lawrence had ever actually seen such a child. He had always assumed they would be disgustingly bestial, but judging from appearance alone, this one was a plausible goddess. Oh ho! I have never met another holo. Whence do they hail? As the girl chewed the meat, it was hard to see her trying to deceive anyone. It seemed possible that having been raised in confinement for so long, she really did believe herself to be a god. It is the name of this area's harvest god. Are you a god? At this, the girl's moonlit face was slightly troubled for a moment before she smiled. I have long been bound to this place and called its god. but I am nothing so great as a deity. I am merely hollow. Lawrence guessed that this meant she'd been locked away in her home since she was born. He felt a certain sympathy for the girl. By long, do you mean that you were born here? Oh no, this was an unexpected answer. I was born far to the north. The north? Indeed, the summers there are short and the winters long, a world of silver. Hollow's eyes narrowed as she seemed to gaze into the distance, and it was hard to imagine that she was lying. Her behavior as she reminisced about the lands of the north was too natural to be an act. Have you ever been there? Lawrence wondered if she was counterattacking, but if Hollow was lying or merely repeating the things she'd heard from others, he would have been able to tell immediately. His travels as a merchant had, in fact, led him to the far north before. I've been as far as a what? Arohitostok. Arohitostok. Huh. The year-round blowing snow is terrifying. Haven't heard of it, replied Hollow, inclining her head slightly. He'd expected her to pretend to have knowledge. This was strange. What places do you know? He asked. A place called Yoitsu. Lawrence forced himself to say, don't know it, to quell the unease that rose within him. He did know of a place called Yoitsu from an old story he had heard at an inn in the north. Were you born there? He asked. I was. How is Yoitsu doing these days? Is everyone well? Ho asked, slumping slightly. It was such a fleeting gesture that it couldn't have been an act. Yet Lawrence could not possibly believe her. After all, according to the story, the town of Yoitsu had been destroyed by Ursine monsters 600 years ago. Do you remember any other places? It's been so many centuries. Nyohira. There was a town called Nyohira. It was a strange town with hot springs. I would often go there to bathe in them. There were still hot springs in the north at Nyohira, where royalty and nobility often visited. But how many people in this area would even know of its existence? Ignoring Lawrence's confused reverie, Hollow spoke as if she were even now relaxing in the hot water. Then suddenly she sneezed. I did not mind taking human form, but it is unavoidably cold. Not enough fur, said Hollow, laughing and hiding herself again in the pall of marten pelts. Lawrence couldn't help laughing at her appearance. There was something that still worried him, though, so he spoke to Hollow as she snuggled into the fur pile. You said something about changing forms earlier. What was that about? At his question, Hollow poked her head out of the pile. I meant just what I said. I haven't taken human form in some time. Charming, no? She said with a smile. Lawrence couldn't help agreeing, but he kept a straight face as he replied. The curl could make him lose his composure, that was certain. Aside from a few extra details, you're human. Or what else? Are you a dog turned human? Like the stories of horses turning into human? Hollow stood at the slight provocation. Turning her back to him, she looked over her shoulder at him and responded steadily. You can doubtless tell from my ears and tails that I am a proud wolf. My fellow wolves, the animals of the forest, and the people of the village all acknowledge me. It is... my neck. Okay, tea time. It is of the white tip of my tail that I am proudest. My ears anticipate every misfortune and hear every lie, and I have saved many friends from many dangers. When one speaks of the wisest wolf of Yoitsu, they speak of none other than me. Hollow sniffed proudly, but soon remembered the cold and dove back under the furs. The tail at the base of her back was indeed moving. Not just the ears, then. She had a tail as well. Lawrence thought back on her howl. It was a true wolf's howl, unmistakably. It was this then truly Hollow, wolf god of the harvest? What's this then truly Hollow, wolf god of the harvest? No, it can't be, muttered Lawrence to himself as he reconsidered Hollow. She seemed unconcerned about him, as she narrowed her eyes in the warm furs. Seen thus, she was rather cat-like. Although that was not the issue at hand. Was Hollow human, or wasn't she? That was the question. Cat or wolf? Kinda reminds you of someone not claiming to be a cat. Hmm. People who were actually possessed by demons didn't fear the church because their appearance was different. Rather, they feared it because the demon within them could cause outward calamities for which the church made it widely known the penalty was death at the stake. But if Hollow was instead a transformed animal like the old tales, she might bring good fortune or perform miracles. Indeed, if she was the Hollow, god of the harvest, a wheat trader could ask for no finer companion. Lawrence turned his attention back to Hollow. Hollow, was it? Yes. You said you were a wolf. I did. Well, all you have are a wolf's ear and tail. If you are truly a transformed wolf, you should be able to take a wolf's form. Hollow stared absently for a while at Lawrence's words before something seemed to occur to her. Oh, you're telling me to show you my wolf form. Lawrence nodded at the truth of the statement, but it was in fact mildly surprised. He had expected her to either be flustered or flatly lie, but she had done neither, instead looking simply irritated. This expression of irritation was far more persuasive than the clumsy lie, the assertion that she could transform, that he expected. I don't want to, she said plainly. Why not? Why do you want me to? She shot back, pouting. Why do you want me to? Lawrence winced at her retort, but the question of whether Hollow was human or not was an important one to him. Recovering from his stumble, Lawrence put as much confidence as he could muster into his voice, trying to regain the conversation initiative. If you were a person, I would consider turning you into the church. Demons cause calamity, after all. But if you are really Hollow, god of the harvest, in human form, then I needn't turn you in. Were she genuine? Well, tales of transformed animals acting as envoys of good fortune still remained. Far from turning her in as a demon, he would happily offer her wine and bread. If not, the situation would be different. As Lawrence spoke, Hollow wrinkled her nose, and her expression grew darker and darker. From what I have heard, transformed animals can change into their original forms. If you are telling the truth, you should be able to do so as well, yes? Hollow listened with the same irritated expression. At length, she sighed softly and slowly extracted herself from the pile of furs. I have suffered many times at the hand of the church. I'll not be given over to them, yet... She sighed again, stroking her tail as she continued. No animal can change its form without a token. Even you humans need makeup before you can change your appearance. Likewise, I require food. What kind of food? Only a bit of wheat. That seemed more and less reasonable for a god of the harvest, Lawrence had to admit, but her next statement brought him up short. That, or fresh blood. Fresh blood? Only a bit, though. Her casual tone made Lawrence feel that she couldn't be lying. His breath caught, and he glanced at her mouth. Just a moment ago, he'd seen the fangs behind those lips bite into the meat that he'd dropped. What? Are you afraid? Said Hollow at Lawrence's trepidation as she smiled ruefully. Lawrence would have said, of course not, but Hollow was clearly anticipating his reaction. But soon the smile disappeared from her face, and she looked away from him. If you are, then I'm more disinclined to. Why then? Lawrence asked, putting more strength into his voice, feeling that he was being made sport of. Because you will surely quake with fear. All, be they human or animal, look on my form and give way with awe, and treat me as special. I have tired of this treatment. Are you saying I would be afraid of your true form? If you would pretend to be strong, you might first hide your trembling hand, Hall said, exasperated. Lawrence looked down at his hands, but by the time he realized his mistake, it was too late. Hey, you're an honest sort, said the amused Hollow. But before Lawrence could offer an excuse, her expression darkened again, and she continued as quick as an arrow. However, just because you're honest does not mean I should show you my form. Was what you said before the truth? Before? That if I'm truly a wolf, you would not get me over to the church. Lawrence had heard that there were some demons capable of illusions, so this was not a decision he could make lightly. Hollow seemed to anticipate this and spoke again. Well, I have a good eye for both men and beasts. You're a man who keeps his word, I can tell. Lawrence was still unable to find his tongue at the mischievous Hollow's words. He certainly could go back on his word. He was understanding more and more that he was toying with him, but there was nothing he could do about it. I'll show you a bit then. A full transformation is difficult. You'll forgive me if I only do my arm, said Hollow, reaching down into the corner of the wagon bed. For a moment, Lawrence thought that it was some sort of special pose she had to assume, but he soon realized what she was doing. She was picking a grain of wheat from the sheaf in the corner of the wagon. What are you doing with that? Asked Lawrence without thinking. Before he could even finish the question, Hollow popped the grain of wheat into her mouth and, closing her eyes, swallowed it like a pill. The shell of the unhusked kernel was not edible. Lawrence frowned at the thought of the bitter taste in his mouth, but that thought soon vanished at the sight that came next. Hollow groaned, clutching her left arm and falling into the pile of furs. Lawrence was about to say something. This could not be an act. When a strange sound reached his ears. Shh, 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 shh. It was the sound of mice running through the forest. It was continued for a few moments, then ended with a muffled thud, like something treading on soft ground. Lawrence was so surprised he could do nothing. The next moment, Hollow's formerly slim arm had transformed into the forepaw of some huge beast and was totally unsuited to the rest of her body. Yeah, it really doesn't look very good. The limb appeared to be so large that she would have trouble supporting it. She rested the giant leg on the pile of furs and shifted herself to accommodate it. Well, do you believe me now? She looked up at Lawrence. Lawrence was unable to reply, rubbing his eyes and shaking his head as he looked and looked again at the sight before him. The leg was magnificent and was coated in dark brown fur. Given the size of the leg, the full animal would be huge, roughly as big as the horse. Or as a horse. The paw ended in a huge scythe-like claws, and all that grew from the girl's slender shoulder. It would be strange to think it wasn't an illusion. Unable to believe it, Lawrence finally took a skin of water and doused his face with it. Aren't you the doubtful one? If you still think it's an illusion, go ahead and touch it, teased Hollow, smiling, curling the giant paw into a come hither motion. Come hither! Lawrence found himself irritated, yet still he hesitated. Besides the sheer size of the limb, it also gave off a certain ineffable sense of danger. It was the leg of a wolf. I've dealt with the goods called dragon's legs, Lawrence told himself, irritated at his cowardice. And just before his hand could touch it, "Oh!" said Hollow, seeming to remember something. Lawrence snapped his hand back. Touch the wolf. What is it? Oh, nothing. Don't be surprised, said Hollow, now sounding annoyed. Adding embarrassment to his fear, Lawrence became angrier and angrier at what he felt was his failure as a man. Getting hold of himself, he reached out once again. So what happened? Said Hollow meekly, looking up at Lawrence. Be gentle, will you? Lawrence couldn't help stopping his hand short at her suddenly endearing manner. He looked at her, and she looked back, grinning. You're rather charming, aren't you? She said. Lawrence said nothing as he made sure of what his hand was feeling. He was irritated at her half-teasing manner, but there was another reason he failed to reply. It was of course because of what he was touching. What are you touching, Lawrence? The beast's leg that thrust from Hollow's shoulder had bone as thick as solid as the tree's limb, wrapped in sinew that would be the envy of any soldier, and covering that a magnificent coat of brown fur from the base of the shoulder all the way down to the paw. Each pad of the paw was the size of an uncut loaf of bread. Past the soft pink toes were something denser, a scythe of her claws. The leg was solid enough, but those claws were anything but illusionary. In addition to the not warm, yet not cold sensation peculiar to animal claws, Lawrence felt a thrill at the sensation that these were not something that he should be touching. He swallowed. Are you really a god? He murmured. I'm no god. As you can tell from my forepaw, I am merely bigger than my comrades, bigger and cleverer. I am Hollow, the wise wolf. The girl who so confidently called herself wise, looked at Lawrence proudly. She had the doya face. She was every bit mischievous young girl, but the aura that the beast limb exuded was not something a mere animal could ever manage. It had nothing to do with the size of the thing. So, what think you? Lawrence nodded vaguely at her question, but the real hollow should be in Yari now. The wolf resides in the one who cuts the last wheat stalk, they say. He 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 he. I am Hollow the Wise Wolf. I know well my own limitations. It is true that I live within the wheat. Without it, I cannot live. And it is also true. I bit my tongue. Ha ha. It is also true that I live within the wheat. Wait, I already read this. And it is also true that during this harvest, I was within the last wheat to be harvested, and usually I cannot escape from there. Not while any were watching. However, there is an exception. Lawrence listened to her explanation, impressed with her rapid delivery. If there is a nearby larger sheaf of wheat than the last one to be harvested, I can move unseen to that wheat. That's why they say it, the villagers. If you cut off greedily, you won't catch the harvest god, and it will escape. Lawrence glanced at his wagon bed, and with a sudden realization, there was a sheaf of wheat, the wheat that he'd received from the mountain village. So that is how it was done. I suppose one could call you my savior. If you hadn't been there, I would have never escaped. Although Lawrence could not quite bring himself to believe those words, they were lent persuasion when Hollow swallowed a few more wheat grains and returned her arm to normal. However, Hollow had said savior with a certain distaste, so Lawrence decided to get even with her. Perhaps I should take that wheat back to the village then. They'll be in a bad way without their harvest god. I've been friends with Nyari and the others in Paslo for a long time. I'd hate to see them suffer. He concocted the pretense on the spot, but the more he thought about it, the truer it seemed. If this hollow was the real hollow, then wouldn't the villagers begin suffering poor harvests? After a few moments, his ruminations ended. Hollow was looking at him as if stricken. You're jesting, surely, she said. Her suddenly frail mien rocked the defenseless merchant. Hard to say, Lawrence said vaguely, trying to conceal his internal conflict and buy some time. Even as his head filled with other concerns, his heart grew only more uneasy. Lawrence agonized. If Hollow was what she claimed to be, the god of the harvest, his best course of action would be to return her to the village. He had long associated with Paslo. He did not wish them ill. However, when he looked back at Hollow, her earlier bravado was entirely gone. Now she looked down, as apprehensive as any princess in an old knight tale. Lawrence grimaced and put the question to himself. Should I return this girl to the village, even though she clearly does not want to go? What if she is the real Hollow? He mulled the matter over in a cold sweat, the two questions battling in his mind. Presently he became aware of someone looking at him. He followed the look to its source and saw Hollow gazing at him beseechingly. Please help me, won't you? Unable to stand the sight of Hollow so meekly bowing her head, Lawrence turned away. All he saw, day in and day out, was the backside of a horse. The life left him completely unable to resist a girl like Hollow looking at him with such a face. Agonizingly, he came to a decision. He turned slowly back to Hollow and asked her a single question. I must ask you one thing. All right. If you leave the village, will they still be able to raise wheat? He didn't expect Hollow to answer in a way that would weaken her own position, but he was a merchant. He had dealt with any number of dishonest negotiators in his time. He had confidence that if Hollow attempted to lie, he would know. Lawrence readied himself to catch the prevarication he was sure would come, but come it didn't. When he looked at her, she wore an expression completely different from what he had seen so far. She looked angry and near tears as she stared into the corner of the wagon bed. What's wrong? Lawrence had to ask. The village's abundant harvest will continue without me, she spat, her voice surprisingly irate. Is that so? Asked Lawrence, overwhelmed by the piercing anger that emanated from Hollow. Hollow nodded, squaring her shoulders. She grabbed the furs tightly, her hands white from the effort. Long did I stay in the village, as many years as I have hairs on my tail. Eventually, I wished to leave it, but for the sake of the village's wheat, I stayed. Long ago, you see, I made a promise with the youth of the village that I would ensure the village's harvest, and so I kept my promise. Perhaps because she couldn't stomach it, she did not so much as look at Lawrence as she spoke. Earlier, her wit and words had been quick and easy. Now she stumbled uncertainly. I am the wolf that lives in the wheat. My knowledge of wheat, of things that grow in the ground, is second to none. That is why I make the villages feel so magnificent, as I promised. But to do that, occasionally the harvest must be poor. Forcing the land to produce requires compensation. But whenever the harvest was poor, the villagers attributed it to my caprices, and it had only grown worse in the recent years. I have been wanting to leave. I can stand it no longer. I long ago fulfilled my promise. Lawrence understood Hollow's anger. Some years ago, Paslow had come under the care of Count Arendot, and since then, new farming techniques had been imported from the south, increasing yield. Hollow thus felt her presence was no longer necessary. Indeed, the rumor was proliferating that not even God of the Church existed. It was not impossible that a countryside hamlet's harvest god had gotten wrapped up in such talk. The village's good harvest will continue. There will be poor yield every few years, but that will be their own doing, and they'll overcome it on their own. The land doesn't need me, and the people certainly don't need me either. Getting her words out all in one breath, Hollow sighed deeply and fell over on the pile of furs yet again. She curled up, pulling the furs around her and burying her face in them. He could not see her face to make certain, but it seemed not impossible that she was crying. Lawrence scratched his head, unsure of what to say. He looked helplessly at her slender shoulder and wolf ears. Perhaps this was how a real god acted, now full of bluster and bravado, now wielding a sharp wit, now showing a childish temper. Lawrence was at a loss at how to treat a girl now. Nevertheless, he couldn't very well remain silent, so he took a new approach. In any case, setting aside the question of whether or not that's all true. You think I'm a liar, snapped Hollow at his preamble. He faltered, but Hollow seemed to realize that she herself was being too emotional. She stopped, abashed, and muttered a quick sorry before burying her head back in the fur again. I understand your resentment, but where do you plan to go, having left the village? She did not answer immediately, but Lawrence saw her ears prick at his question, so he waited patiently. She had just delivered a significant confession, and Lawrence expected that she simply couldn't face anyone for a moment. At length, Hollow guiltily looked into the corner of the wagon bed, confirming Lawrence's suspicions. I wish to return north, she said flatly. North? Hollow nodded, turning her gaze up and off into the distance. Lawrence didn't have to follow it to know where she was looking. True north. My birthplace, the forest of Yoitsu. So many years have passed that I could no longer count them. I wish to return home. The word birthplace left Lawrence momentarily shocked, and he looked at Hollow's profile. He himself had not visited his hometown once since embarking on the life of a wandering merchant. It was a poor and cramped place of which he had few good memories, but after long days in the driver's seat, sometimes loneliness overcame him, and he couldn't help thinking fondly of that place. If Hollow was telling the truth, not only she left her home hundreds of years ago, but she endured neglect and ridicule at the place in which she settled. He could guess at her loneliness. But I'd like to travel a bit. I've come all this way to this distant place after all. And surely much has changed over the months and years, so it would be good to broaden my perspective, said Hollow, looking at Lawrence, her face a picture of calm. So long as you'll not take me back to Paslow or turn me into the church, I'd like to travel with you. You're a wandering merchant, are you not? She regarded Lawrence with a friendly smile that suggested she'd seen right through him and knew he would not betray her. She sounded like an old friend asking a simple favor. Lawrence had yet to determine whether or not he believed Hollow's story, but as far as he could tell, she was not a bad sort, and he'd begun to enjoy conversing with the strange girl. But he wasn't so won over by her charm as to forget his merchant's instincts. A good merchant had the audacity to face a god and the caution to doubt a close relative. Lawrence thought it over, then spoke quietly. I cannot make this decision quickly. He expected complaint, but had underestimated Hollow. She nodded in comprehension. It is good to be cautious, but I never misread a person. I don't believe you're so cold to turn someone away. Hollow spoke with mischievous smile playing across her lips. She then turned and hopped back into the pile of furs, albeit without the sulkiness she'd shown before. It seems as though she was saying enough talk for today. As she derailed from the conversation yet again, Lawrence could only grin in spite of himself as he watched Hollow. He thought he could see her ears moving, then her head popped out and she looked at him. Whoop! Surely you'll not tell me to sleep outside, she said, obviously aware that he could do no such thing. Lawrence shrugged, Hollow giggled and returned to her fur pile. Seeing her like this, Lawrence wondered if her actions earlier were something of an act, as if she were trying to play the part of the imprisoned princess. Nevertheless, he thought of that her dissatisfaction with the village or her desire to return home were lies. And if those weren't lies, then he must believe that she was the real Hollow, because a mere demon-possessed girl would not be able to make it all up. Lawrence sighed as he realized that more thought would not yield any new answers. He decided to go to sleep and leave further ruminations for the morrow. The furs that Hollow slept in belonged to Lawrence. It was ludicrous to think that their owner would forego their comfort and sleep on the wagon's driving bench. Telling her to move over to one side, he too snuggled into the fur pile. From behind him, he heard the quiet sounds of Hollow's breathing. Although he told her he couldn't make a quick decision, Lawrence had already decided that as long as Hollow had not made off with his goods in the morning, he would travel with her. This is a long chapter. He doubted that she was the sort of troublemaker, but if she was, he thought, she would surely make off with his entire load. He looked forward to the next day. After all, it had been a long time since he'd slept beside another. It was impossible to be unhappy with her slightly sweet scent piercing the strong-smelling furs. The horse heaved a sigh as if reading Lawrence's simple thought. Perhaps horses really could understand human and simply preferred not to speak. Lawrence grinned ruefully and closed his eyes. Okay, pause. Whew. Yeah, YouTube and my connection, skipping once a while. I bet the horse was like, yada yada. Yada yada. Man, can you imagine the warm bed, Hollow beside you, fluffy. Yeah. Hydration check. I wish I had more tea. I ran out of tea. At this rate, I feel like we only might get through chapter 1 because it's quite long. It's quite long. But if you're interested in the future chapters, can always check out the novel yourself. And all the illustrations inside it. Yeah, we might have to stop after the first chapter. I didn't realize it was this long. Okay. Anyways, shall we continue? Yeah, remember, Bookwalker, you can use the code INA for new customers. Yes. 600 yen coupon. Ina. Okay. Lawrence rose early the next morning. He was like most merchants who awoke early in order to extract the most profit from the day. However, when he opened his eyes to the morning mist, Hollow was already up, sitting next to him, and rummaging through something. For an instant, Lawrence wondered if his estimation of her had been wrong, but if so, she was truly audacious. He raised his head and looked over his shoulder, and it appeared she had gone looking for clothes among his things and was just now tying her shoes. Hey now, those are mine! Even if it wasn't actual theft, even a god shouldn't be rummaging around through other people's things. Hollow turned around at Lawrence's rebuke. but there was not so much a trace of guilt on her face. Hmm? Ah, you're awake. What think you of this? Does it look good? She asked, completely unconcerned as she spread her arms. Far from chastened. She seemed actually proud. Seeing her like this made the uncertain, overwrought Hollow of yesterday seem like something out of a dream. Indeed, it seemed that the real Hollow, the one he'd have to contend from here and out, was this impudent, prancing thing. Incidentally, the clothes she now wore Lawrence's best, the one outfit he reserved for negotiations with rich traders and the like. The top was an indigo blue shirt underneath a 3/4 length vest. The trousers were a rare combination of linen and leather, with a skirt that wrapped fully around her lower body, tied with a fine sheepskin sash. The boots were a rare prize, made of tanned leather and triple-layered, good even in snowy mountains. Over all this, she wore a bearskin greatcoat. Merchants take pride in their practical, dignified clothing. To buy these, Lawrence had saved gradually, beginning in his apprenticeship. It had taken him 10 years. If he showed up to a negotiation wearing these with a nicely groomed beard, he would have most people at a disadvantage. And Hollow now wore these garments. He couldn't find it in himself to be angry with her, though. All the clothes were clearly too big for her, which made it all the more charming. Ah, the great cloak is black. My brown hair looks lovely against it, eh? These trousers, though, they get in the way of my tail. Might I put a hole in them? The trousers she spoke of so likely had been made by a master craftsman only after significant effort on Lawrence's part. A hole would likely prove impossible to repair. He shook his head resolutely. Well, fortunately, they're still large. I'll find a way to make them work. Hollow seemed not to harbor the faintest concern that she would be asked to take the clothes off. Lawrence didn't think she was likely to run away while wearing them, but nevertheless he rose and regarded her. If she were to go to a city and sell them, they would fetch a tidy amount of gold. You're a merchant through and through, that's sure enough. I know just what you anticipate with that expression on your face, said Hollow, smiling. She jumped lightly down from the wagon. Ah, she's so cute. She's so cute. She's so fluffy and she's so cute. She's smiling. I wanna fluff her ears. She's so cute. Okay, feast your eyes on the cute wolf waifu, Hollow. while I take a drink, a sip of my drink. Yes, she's so cute. Okay. Her movement was so unassuming and natural that he had no reaction. If she'd run just then, he would have been unable to pursue. Or perhaps he didn't react because he didn't believe she would run. I'll not run, if that had been my aim. I'd have gone long since. Lawrence glanced at the wheat sheaf in the wagon bed, then looked back at the smiling Hollow. She took the bearskin cloak off and tossed it back in the wagon. Evidently, the cloak, which had been made for Lawrence's height, was too big for her. She was even smaller than he'd realized yesterday. Having seen her only in the dim moonlight, Lawrence was on the tall side, but even so, she was fully 2 heads shorter than him. Then, as she verified the fit of the rest of the clothes, she spoke offhandedly. So, I wish to travel with you. May I? She smiled, but did not seem to flatter. If she tried to flatter him, Lawrence felt there might have been a reason to refuse her, but she simply smiled happily. Lawrence sighed. She didn't seem to be a thief, at least. He couldn't let his guard down, but it wouldn't hurt to let her come along, and sending her away would only make the constant loneliness harder to bear. This must be some kind of fate. Very well, Lawrence said. Hollow did not appear especially overjoyed. She merely smiled. You'll have to earn your keep, though. The life of a merchant isn't easy. I expect the god of abundant harvest to bring an abundant harvest to my coin purse. I'm not so shameless to have a thoughtlessly freeload. I am Hollow the Wise Wolf, and I have my pride, said Hollow sullenly. Lawrence was not so blind as to think she wasn't making a show of childish indignation, though. Surely, though, Hollow chuckled. Though, this proud wolf made a bit of spectacle of her yesterday, she said, deprecatingly. As if her flustered demeanor reflected her true feelings. In any case, it is good to meet you, Lawrence. Craft Lawrence. Ah, that's a familiar name. When I'm working, I go by Lawrence. Lawrence. I shall sing you praises for all eternity, said Hollow, with chest thrust forward, her wolf ears prickling up proudly. She seemed oddly serious. It was difficult to tell if she was being childish or cunning. She was like the ever-changing mountain weather. Apparently, that ever-changing mood was part of her craftiness. Lawrence hastily revised his opinion and offered his hand from the wagon bed. It was the proof that he truly acknowledged her presence as a companion. Hollow smiled and took his hand. Her hand was small and warm. At any rate, it will soon rain. We should make haste. What? You should have said sooner, exclaimed Lawrence, loudly enough to startle the horse. The previous night hadn't brought so much as a hint of rain, but looking up at the sky, he could indeed see clouds beginning to gather. Hollow chuckled at him as he hurriedly made preparations to depart. She scampered on board the wagon, and it was obvious enough from the ease with which she rearranged the septum first that she would be more handy than some fresh-faced apprentice child. The river is in a foul temper. 'Twould be wise to cross a short distance from here. After Lawrence roused the horse, collected the bucket, and took the reins in hand, Hollow joined him in the driver's seat. It was too big for one person, but slightly too small for two. But to ward off the chill, too small was just right. With the neigh of the horse, the pair's strange travel had begun. Ah! I'm gonna guess that was chapter 1. Yes, that was chapter 1. Yay! That was a lot of reading. Even when I had to read in class, I think I didn't have to read like almost 50 pages in one sitting out loud by myself. Yay! What you guys think? Did it bring back good old memories from when you first learned of the series? Or is it all new to you and you got interested in reading and watching the series? Yeah, it really has that, nostalgic feeling, and the chapter 1 really did a really good job reflecting on the what should I say, the atmosphere of the series, and it's like the journey is beginning, how they met. It's so nice. Yeah. Sorry, I stumbled upon some words. Yeah, English difficult. I speak English. English very, very 難しい. I did my best. 英語上手. Did I just get 英語上手? Yeah, talking is difficult. Like when I'm just talking, it's fun because I'm not reading words on paper, but when you actually have to read like out loud, it's like when your brain, brain too fast, can't read. In English. Yes. そうだよ。みんな英語上手。So, if you guys are interested in learning more about the series and reading along, there's like 21 volumes of Spice and Wolf, and there's also a sequel. You guys can check it out. on Bookwalker. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Honestly, it's a series that really makes me feel nostalgic because I watched it quite a while ago, but definitely kind of want to watch it again. So yes, make sure to use the code. Use the code INA for a 600 yen coupon. Do it. Thank you. Yes, yes. The link and more information on Spice and Wolf, etc., is in the description below. I know I said I wanted to try read through chapter 2, but turns out chapter 1 is quite long. So we're gonna wrap it up for today. Now that I have the volume though, I definitely wanna read through it. Maybe next time I take a bath, I'll just have my iPad on the side and read along. Make sure you check out the entire series and Bookwalker. Very useful for finding all kinds of light novels and manga that you wanted to read. Officially translated into English. Yes, yes, yes. There's a lot of light novels that I can recommend to you guys. But maybe another time we can do like a chatting stream where I talk about all the different light novel series that I like. Yes, yes, yes. Anyways, thank you very much, everyone, for coming to watch today. I apologize for the technical difficulties of dropping frames like crazy. I shall fix that for the next stream that we have. So honestly, once in a while I have to just reset my router. It's probably that time of the year. Yes. Yes, yes. Make sure you use the code INA. And yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to watch. I hope you enjoyed it. I guess for non-members, it's your first time seeing this stream setup. But the nighttime and the crickets and flowing water. I used it quite a bit of times in member streams before, but I don't think I've showed it off in the normal streams yet. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen the background, you don't. This is you guys got teleported into a different dimension where it's summer and evening all the time. Yes, we're sitting outside on the porch and reading and talking. So yeah, I made the background in Blender. Yeah, I made it quite a while ago, but I forgot. I think I made it for the bedtime story stream. Yes. Anyways, don't worry. In this dimension, there is no mosquitoes. It's just comfy summertime. Yes. And yeah, we're gonna be wrapping it up. Yes, yes. Yeah, only one chapter. Because I feel like we're gonna be here a while if it's 2 chapters and onwards. But maybe if I have permission to, I can do more in the future. But we'll see. We'll see. Yes. Make sure you guys. I already said this like twice, but check out the series. Use the coupon INA. Thank you for all the super chats and welcome to all the new members. Yes, 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 yes. And there was 2 images which Burrito conveniently blocked off, but you can definitely see those in the actual copies of the book. Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you next time. Yeah, next time. Yeah, I already put up the schedule on Twitter. I'll upload it onto YouTube right after this. But yes. Until then, bye bye. Bye bye.